This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. Sudanese military and opposition forces agree on a constitutional declaration, but the former ruling party rejects the power-sharing deal. We ask, is this significant? A Nigerian court allows a controversial Shia Muslim leader to leave jail for medical treatment abroad, but he must return. Egypt's president says he is determined to face down terrorism as the death toll from Sunday's blast in central Cairo rises to 20. Also in the program, storing milk, saving lives. The human breast milk banks giving lifeline to mothers and newborn babies.
I give her the milk, she drinks it and sleeps. And now she's growing. I'm happy. This donated milk is good.
And in sport, why was Algerian captain Riyad Mahrez missing from Manchester City's Community Shield triumph? His manager explains. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. We turned a tough page of Sudan's history. Those were the words of the head of the Military Council as he initialed an agreement with the opposition coalition representatives. Now, the constitutional declaration signed on Sunday paves the way for a transitional government. The two sides are due to put their final signatures on the agreement on the 17th of August. But there's already criticism from Sudan's former ruling party. The BBC's Tomi Oladipo reports.
Finally, the negotiations are over. And it's taken months for Sudan's military and opposition to get to this point. On Sunday, leaders from the two sides put their initials on a document. And this agreement is meant to be formalized on the 17th of August. The following day, a sovereign council will be inaugurated. That will be the most senior arm of this incoming government. That will be followed by the appointment of a prime minister and then a cabinet, which will be headed by the prime minister. There'll also be a parliament with the main opposition alliance making up the majority. Now, while there has been some celebration in certain circles at the signing of this agreement, some opposition parties have rejected the deal altogether. The former ruling party, the NCP, says the agreement did not refer to the Islamic religion as a source of legislation. The deal was also rejected by the Sudanese Revolutionary Front, which felt excluded from the talks altogether. There was also criticism from the Sudanese Communist Party, which pulled out of the talks because it could not get some amendments in. It also said it could not sit at the negotiating table with the military, which it accuses of using violence against civilians. Now, this deal, once it comes into place, will have this incoming government, which will be expected to lead Sudan through the next 3 years until elections are held and a fully civilian administration is brought into being, which is what the pro-democracy protesters have been calling for.
Tomi Oladipo reporting there. Well, joining me from The Hague in the Netherlands is Dr. Adem Abebe, a governance and democracy analyst. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. Now, the head of the Military Council, in his own words, said, "We turned a tough page of Sudan's history by signing this agreement." What are the main issues that stuck out for you in this agreement?
Thank you very much for having me. So I think institutionally what came out strongly really is the fact that the cabinet would be very powerful. If you look at the negotiation process, it mainly focused on the sovereign council, but when you look at the declaration, it's actually the cabinet that will be the driving force behind the transition. And given the fact that the cabinet is more civilian than military, I think it kind of shifts the balance towards the civilian authorities. Another point that came out strongly really is the fact that the declaration established a unified army. As you may remember, Sudan currently has an armed forces and the rapid support forces, and also the intelligence services that have their own armed groups. But the declaration unifies these authorities. So I think the two came out very, very strongly. And in terms of substance, I think what came out strongly was, you referred to it already, the fact that there's no reference to Islam, which is very distinct compared to the current system. And at the same time, there's also a strong representation for women, especially in the transitional parliament. I think the two, institutionally and substantively, came out strongly.
So those were some strong points that stuck out for you. But there are two issues. One you've mentioned, that is, of course, of the reference to Islam as religion for legislation. And then, of course, there are some opposition parties that are now saying, look, we were excluded from this process. Is it significant at all?
No, that's right. Especially if you look at the National Congress Party, which is the party of former President al-Bashir, they were officially excluded from the negotiation process. And it's also accurate that the current constitution does not specifically refer to Islam. But at the same time, it also does not exclude Islam specifically. So I think we'll have to see how it progresses. But as it stands now, religion may not play a significant role in the structuring of the state. That will come out in the next stage. Now, obviously, in a negotiation of this scale, it's very difficult to have everybody's agreement. What is important is that the transitional government, as it operates, must try and work and win the confidence of everyone, including those who are outside of the transition government.
All right. So we know that the African Union has been key in these negotiations. So people might be wondering, is it time that they lifted the suspension on Sudan? And when should they?
Well, so under the African Union rules, suspension will be lifted only when constitutional order has been restored. And now, at times, it has been argued that only elections, the organization of democratic elections, constitutes a restoration of constitutional order. But considering, I think, especially, as I said, the powerful cabinet, which is civilian, you can say that there is a transition that can satisfy the demands of the African Union. So it will be for the Peace and Security Council to consider whether, indeed, there is a restoration of constitutional order. And I think the fact that it bent towards civilian authorities might convince the African Union to lift the suspension.
All right. Dr. Adema Bebe, thank you very much indeed for talking to us on Focus on Africa. Thank you. Now, the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has described an explosion in Cairo that killed at least 20 people as an act of terrorism. It happened on Sunday after a car containing explosives collided with 3 other vehicles. The blast forced the partial evacuation of a nearby National Cancer Institute hospital. The BBC's Sally Nabil tells us more.
They are trying to clear the damage, but it's too heavy to be removed. Egypt's National Cancer Institute has been hit hard in a deadly blast last night in central Cairo. The Ministry of Interior said it was caused by a car full of explosives that was en route to a different destination to carry out a terrorist attack. It seems the institute was not the target of the explosive-laden vehicle.
As we can see now, they are lifting the debris resulting from the huge explosion that took place here. A lot of people are still in a state of shock. They just can't believe what happened. Cancer patients from all over the country come to this place to receive treatment for free. Now the place has been evacuated and dozens of patients have been moved to nearby hospitals.
This is how the scene looked like last night. Charred wreckage, smashed windows, and ambulances hurrying to help the wounded. It's exactly here where patients usually queue for hours waiting to get checked or treated. Eyewitnesses say the sound of the blast was deafening.
At first we felt pressure all around us and in our ears. We were surprised. After a while we heard an explosion. It was extreme. We thought it was an earthquake.
It was raining rocks and iron. I ran to my daughter to protect her. I saw she was hit by something in her head.
President Sisi expressed his condolences and said Egypt is determined to conquer terrorism, but nothing can bring solace to the families of the victims at the moment. Their wounds might never heal. Sally Nabil, BBC News, Cairo.
Well, let's take a quick look now at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. Researchers have launched an Ebola vaccine trial in the western part of Uganda on the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is hoped the operation will provide key information about the immune response and the safety of the vaccine. The trial will take 2 years and will target 800 individuals, mostly health workers and frontline workers. India has revoked part of its constitution that gives Indian administers Kashmir special status in an unprecedented move likely to spark unrest with Pakistan, with whom the territory is disputed. And the move ends Kashmir's right to make its own laws and decide who can settle there. The Pakistani foreign minister condemned it as illegal and completely unacceptable. Now, these Senegalese conjoined twins, now Mariam and Deye, were not expected to live for more than a few days, but they are now 3 years old. Surgeons in the UK had considered separating them, but their father thought it risky. Now, the twins travelled from Senegal to Cardiff, where they continue to beat the odds against them. Aminu Kado reports.
Mariam and Ndeye are conjoined twins. They were born in May 2016 in Senegal. Doctors did not expect them to live beyond a few days. Now age 3, the girls continue to grow and develop and are beginning full nursery in Cardiff in Wales in September. Back in January, surgeons were considering attempting separation. But now, that has been found to be impossible.
Both the girls' hearts and circulations particularly are completely entwined with each other, and as well as Mariam being dependent on Ndeye, Ndeye is actually dependent on Mariam for being alive.
The girls' condition is now described as life-limiting, but a period of stability is enabling their father to focus on their future.
I know what I want for them to happen, and I will do whatever possible for it to happen. Having a normal life, going to school when they need to, like any other kid, it's a big achievement. It's a big achievement.
Currently, the girls attend a play group for a few hours a week, and they have learned to move.
So I put them on the floor because I was expecting them to sit down properly, and all of a sudden I felt that they were moving. So I say, oh my God, this is what I pray for every day to happen, for them to be progressively doing what any kid would do.
For now, the twins continue to defy the odds.
They are warriors, they are fighting, so they are pushing their limits back. The only thing I can do is just not to let them walk alone.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, Algeria midfielder Ismail Benacer moves to AC Milan from fellow Italian club Empoli for a reported £14.5 million. We'll have more in the sport. I'm Sophie Ikenye, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program: Sudan's former ruling party of ousted President Omar al-Bashir has rejected the constitutional declaration agreed between the military council and the opposition forces, which will be officially signed on the 17th of August. The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has described an explosion in Cairo that killed at least 20 people as an act of terrorism. The blast on Sunday forced the partial evacuation of a nearby National Cancer Institute hospital. Now, the leader of Nigeria's Shia Muslims has been allowed by the High Court to travel abroad for medical treatment. This follows a long legal dispute and deadly street clashes between his followers and the police. His group, the Islamic Movement in Nigeria, says it's a peaceful movement, but it's been banned and labeled a terrorist organization by Nigerian authorities. The BBC's Ishaq Khalid was at the court in the northern city of Kaduna.
Based on the ruling by this court, Kaduna State High Court, the pro-Iranian Shia leader Sheikh Ibrahim al-Zakzaki and his wife will now travel to India for urgent medical treatment. Their lawyers argued that their conditions have deteriorated while in detention, and now they have not been brought to this court because of health issues. So this leave for medical trip is a kind of progress for the followers and lawyers of Sheikh Ibrahim al-Zakzaki.
Are you happy with that?
Very well. It's as expected. The court was swayed by the submission of Mr. Femi Falana SAN and the various medical reports that were attached to the state application. So the court was also of the view that the life of the applicants must be saved urgently.
Lawyers in this case have explained that the medical leave is not actually a bail. So Ibrahim al-Zakzaki and his wife have not been granted bail, and the government is going to supervise the medical leave.
The court has ruled. It has heard us. It has heard the arguments of counsel, and it has ruled. We are bound by the court ruling of this honorable court. All the parties are bound by the ruling of the court.
Sheikh Ibrahim al-Zakzaki and his wife Zina are facing charges relating to culpable homicide, inciting violence and disturbing public peace. They were arrested in 2015 here in Kaduna State following a military crackdown in which more than 350 members of the Shia sect were killed. The military had alleged that they attempted to assassinate Nigeria's army chief. They denied that allegation. Since the arrest of their leader, they have been coming out on the streets to protest and demand his release, and that has often led to clashes with the police, leading to deaths and injuries. And there are concerns that if the Shia sect and the trial are not properly handled by the Nigerian authorities, it can create another insurgency. At the time that Nigeria is still battling the Boko Haram insurgency, which started exactly 10 years ago in a similar pattern as the Shia crisis.
Ishaq Khalid reporting there. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. Now, this weekend saw the penultimate qualifying round for the 2020 African Nations Championship, or CHAN, slated for Cameroon. South Africa suffered a humiliating 3-0 home defeat by Lesotho in Soweto on Sunday to bow out of contention, having lost 3-2 in the away leg. The embarrassing loss completed a chaotic week for South African football, with England-born national coach Stuart Baxter quitting 2 days ago. Now, Kenya were another second-round casualty after losing 4-1 on penalties in Nairobi, following a second 0-0 draw with East African neighbours Tanzania in successive weekends. Togo ended an 11-year wait for a first CHAN qualifying win. They edged Benin 1-0 in Lomé. In another close encounter, Madagascar needed an away goal to squeeze past Mozambique after losing 3-2 in Maputo. The Nations Championship is restricted to footballers playing in their country of birth. Now, here in England, the Community Shield, which is the curtain raiser to the new football season, was played on Sunday, with Premier League champions Manchester City beating Liverpool on penalties. One notable absence for City was Algeria forward Riyad Mahrez. He was left out because of concerns over medicine he was given by the Algeria medical team during the Nations Cup. That's according to his manager, Pep Guardiola.
Riyad called me right after being champion with Algeria and tell me, I want to come back in 10 days, I want to play against Liverpool, I want to be there. I said, oh, more than welcome. So it's perfect you come. But Riyad making a surgery a little one, no important, and we don't have the, you know, what he took about the medicine. That's why for doping control today was a risk, because the doctors, we didn't have it. That's why today was not maybe in the bench or maybe play some minutes, because that's true. So it's the guy who rests less, and that's why he could have played some minutes, but we could not take a risk because the doctors, we didn't have exactly the medicines or what happened with the surgery, and we didn't want to take a risk. But hopefully next game against West Ham, in the future, everything will be in order.
Finally, some transfer news. Algerian midfielder Ismail Benasser has moved to AC Milan from fellow Italian club Empoli for a reported £14.5 million. The 21-year-old has signed a 5-year contract and joins off the back of helping Algeria win the Africa Cup of Nations during the summer, where he was named player of the tournament. He had a spell at Arsenal from 2015 to 2017 before joining Empoli, and the Gunners reportedly decided not to take up an option to re-sign him. Now, Burundi international Saido Berahino's quest for a fresh start continues after failing to land a deal at French club Nîmes. The 25-year-old striker played a friendly for Nîmes last week against Toulouse, but the club did not offer him a contract. He has returned to train at Belgian club Zulte Waregem, and who have also expressed the possibility of signing him. And Molefi Ntseki has been appointed an interim coach of South Africa a day after Stuart Baxter resigned from the post. The 50-year-old Ntseki was part of Baxter's technical team at the recent Nations Cup in Egypt. The South Africa Football Association says it wants to have a permanent replacement by the end of the month. That's your sports. Sophie, back to you.
Thank you, thank you. Now, in Kenya, a recently opened human breast milk bank is lending a helping hand to vulnerable newborns whose mothers don't have enough breast milk to feed them. Nearly 100 live births take place every day in Nairobi's largest public maternity hospital, Pumwani. The BBC's Pauline Odhiambo went to find out how the scheme works.
Pumwani Hospital in Nairobi's Eastleigh area is one of the oldest maternity hospitals in Kenya, where more than 60 babies are born every day. In a country where up to 6,000 women die every year during childbirth, there is a growing need for human milk banks, which experts say are crucial to the survival of newborn babies. It is here that I meet John, a father of twins who is recently widowed. Today, the twins are back at the hospital for their very first checkup.
My wife was very excited to be having twins because no one in our family had ever had twins. She had plans. We had plans. Big plans for the twins. But now it's all up to me to make sure those plans happen because she's gone.
John's wife died from complications related to childbirth. After her death, the twins were fed on human milk donated by other mothers at the hospital.
My twins were born at 6.5 months. They were underweight. One of them was 1.8 kilos and the other one was 1.4. After my wife died, I was told there's some breast milk donated by some of the women at the hospital. They asked me if I would want to have my twins fed on that donated milk, and so I asked them about any side effects. They reassured me it is treated milk, which is safe for babies. I thought it was a good idea because I noticed the twins' weight increased after being fed on human milk.
We have within the unit nurses and nutritionists who are able to identify mothers who have excess milk and referred to our counselor who speaks to them, and then she takes them through a risk assessment questionnaire. They go through the process of getting taken through informed consenting, and they also agree that they are going to have their blood screened.
Before the milk moves from a mother's breast to a child who needs it, the prospective donors and their milk have to undergo screening to make sure they are free from conditions like HIV, hepatitis, and syphilis, which can be transmitted through breast milk. After about 2 hours of processing, the milk is ready for the babies. In one of the wards, I meet Gloria, who is diabetic and unable to breastfeed. Her baby was born 12 weeks early and is among those benefiting from the donated milk.
When my baby was first given this milk, she didn't have any problems. She even stopped crying. I give her the milk, she drinks it and sleeps. And now she's growing. I'm happy. This donated milk is good.
At the moment, plans are underway to set up more milk banks in Kenya.
Don't forget, you can get in touch with me and some of the team on social media. I'm at Sikenye. That's Focus on Africa for now. Thanks for your company. Bye.